So here we have a car lot full of used vehicles, and I'm going to walk this down because you're probably not sure when you're out shopping for your next used vehicle which one's reliable and which one you want to kick to the curb. So let's just get right to it, and I'm going to share you the good, the bad, and the ugly with ratings included. Let's go. The first one on our list, let's just get right to it. We're looking at a Ford Explorer right there, and this is the ST. So we're talking about the 400 horsepower version. Now a lot of people love these. They look great. The style is definitely impressive, and it has a look like a Range Rover. And I must admit that these catch my eyes. But they're not perfect, and we know some of the regular Explorers had issues with CO emissions inside. There's been problems with paint issues, but this one specifically with the higher 400 horsepower output engine, while it looks great, there have been issues, brake related, driveline related, and some of the troubles that they're actually seeing here, actually they say the transmission, the automatic transmission often needs a lot of tuning, a lot of tweaking, because people are commenting about vibration and shudder in the driveline. The transmission isn't necessarily up to snuff. Well, a lot of people say they have great experience. The bottom line is transmissions seem to be a problem, as well as engines. There have been lots of talk about the engines in these vehicles with oil consumption, as well as piston rings and scoring. Of course, there's issues with the engine transmission, but most importantly, these vehicles actually are not ruthlessly unreliable. So I would give the Ford Explorer like this basically a 3 out of 5 star. Here we have a little Honda, and what do we have? Definitely great looking vehicle. We've got the nice alloys, we got the chrome detail along the side there, and of course we actually have a very Volvo looking detail right here on those rear taillights. The CR-V by Honda, this one's all-wheel drive, and it's the Touring Edition. Now, while generally Honda's had quite a reputation for reliability, which is true, and it generally holds quite sturdy, the bottom line is a lot of the later generation Honda CR-Vs are now carrying the CVT transmission, the continuously variable transmission, and Honda doesn't necessarily have one of the best ones. If you find yourself constantly flooring it off of the stop, that's the hardest, most torque you're applying to the gearbox. And if you're not taking care of the oil services, then a lot of these CVT equipped Hondas, including the CR-V like this one, don't last very long, and those transmissions are in serious jeopardy. Another issue with some of these generations, whether you go with the base engine, of course some of the older versions, and the 2.4 naturally aspirated 4-cylinder was one of their best, most powerful, strongest workhorse engines. Unfortunately, they've gone and replaced it with many models with that 1.5 liter turbo 4, and sadly with that we're seeing oil fuel dilution issues, of course carbon fouling. But the worst part is the oil and fuel. You get fuel inside the oil, mixing it around, and of course it's washing the oil off the cylinder walls, causing scoring, lower compression problems, and as well eating away at the bottom end of the engine. It's a bad scene. So proper warm up, proper cool down, and of course naturally just taking care of your servicing is going to help you. But a lot of these CR-Vs, because of the CVT transmission as well as that 1.5, when you put those together, you have a recipe for disaster. So on average, a Honda CR-V like this, I would rank this at a 3.5 out of 5 star. We have this little Volkswagen. Now we know Volkswagen's going through a lot of troubles right now, and Volkswagen, so financially they're in a world of hurt. The VAG, Volkswagen Audi Group, we know there's some big troubles with this brand, so buying one now seems to be an exercise in futility when you don't know what is around the corner for Volkswagen. They're talking about closing down plants. They need to make up $11 billion because they don't have the money. They put too much into electrification, nobody's buying, and now they're stuck. So there's talk about closing plants, layoffs in Europe, and things are getting ugly downright for Volkswagen. Unfortunately, the quality hasn't been all that great in recent years either, so it's almost insult to injury. And realistically, a lot of people buying these modern day Volkswagens are living in a thing of the past. You realize the old Volkswagens from yesteryear were quite reliable. They were workhorses. But unfortunately, a lot of the later generation vehicles are not. Now you've got turbocharged 4-cylinder engines. You've got a lot of problems. Carbon fouling being one of the issues with these, coolant leaks, water pumps. Of course, we also have timing chains are a big one. The EA888 engine, a lot of times found in a lot of their lineups, are notorious for failures. Timing chains, like I said, guide ramps, and catastrophic engine failures. Yeah, gearbox issues, transmission problems, and General Electric seem to be plaguing a lot of the Volkswagen products, whether it's infotainment system, dash layouts, lights, and a lot of issues like that create a lot of problems for a lot of owners. And sadly, even though they look great, and a lot of people say, hey, you know what, I've had pretty good experience with mine, 9 times out of 10, people are spending a lot of money on maintenance intervals for these things. Often twice, 3 times as much, 4 times as much as you would with some of their competition. And as a result, with the bad clock spring because of the airbag and the steering wheel, oil coolant leaks, and the catastrophic failures combined with all the electrics and the future being unsure. These vehicles are poorly built, relatively unreliable, and they're definitely nothing like the old Volkswagens of old. This one here, I would rank it at a 1.5 out of 5. So unfortunately, Volkswagen isn't the only one with chronic problems. Here we have the next manufacturer, and we're talking about Nissan, as you'll notice right there. And everybody realizes now there's no secrets what's going on with Nissan products. And while some people say they're absolutely brutally reliable, yes, that's if you don't have one of those bad transmissions, because carrying the Jatco CVT transmission, belts, pulleys, squealing, smoke, catastrophic transmission failure, all are results of some of what this transmission can dole out. And sadly enough, when you're talking about a $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000 repair bill, it just is far too risky to find a car like that on a car lot. Any of these modern day smaller Nissan products that carrying the Jatco transmission are very, very problematic and a high probability of a catastrophic failure. Yes, there's also talk about brake noise and weak suspension components that don't seem to hold up. We're also talking about electrics on some of the auxiliaries like that, not necessarily working all the time. And as you circle around, yes, most of the bodywork holds together fairly well, except there have been complaints about bad paint work in some situations with some of these Rogues and Nissans in general. And the electrics inside have been known to be flaky from time to time. The big issue that you're worrying about Nissan Rogues like this are the transmissions. On top of coolant and oil leaks, those are easy to fix. The transmission, not so much. So at the end of the day, the Nissan Rogue, I would give this a 2 out of 5 star. And then after that, we have a pair of Hyundais right here. Right here we have a Hyundai Santa Fe Luxury. This is a 2017. And here we have a 2015 Hyundai Santa Fe Sport. And these are both problematic vehicles. Unfortunately, they look great, and they often look a lot better than a lot of their competition, which is why a lot of people are buying these vehicles. But look, great headlights, beautiful front grille, definitely has a nice look to it. But unfortunately, I've seen these personally. I've shared with those roadside burned, and a lot of them are going down because of various issues. But let's take a quick look around. A lot of these vehicles, they talk about bad brakes, weak suspensions that give out. ABS systems are another weak point on these vehicles where they don't actually activate when they're supposed to. Of course, a lot of other components in the back, the structure, the tailgate, I've heard of being problematic. Carbon fouling, you'll notice a lot of carbon on those tailpipes there. Transmission, big issue with a lot of these vehicles that they talk about transmissions being a big problem. But the worst issue, of course, is the engine. And they're not quite out of the woods, because a lot of their 2 and 2.4 liter engines had problems. Theta 2 engines and many other engines even having some of their rings, the piston rings, locking up, cracking, splitting, scoring the cylinder walls. But most importantly, a lot of the issues carried over were a lot of extra metal particulate in the oil that would hang up in the main bearings, the rod bearings, and result in hot spots, check engine lights, knocking, pinging, or catastrophic engine failure. I certainly can't advocate for a lot of these Hyundai Kia products as we see them right there, and therefore I'm going to give this a 1.5 out of 5. Right here we have a Volvo XC90. This one's a T6 Momentum, as you see on the dash. Yes, they have a lot of great details like this. Yes, it looks very Volvo-ish on the front end, and yes, they're very impressive. Volvo's done a lot of great things with laser cut rims, beautiful fold-away mirrors. You get big sunroof on top, and these gorgeous roof racks up here as well. Here, looks very much like a CRV at the back, does it not? So that's a very interesting piece. And here we have an XC90, as we spoke of, and T6 all-wheel drive. The problem with a lot of these vehicles is a lot of the technology now. As you get into the newer versions of the Volvos, they're not built like the older ones that were crash tested and could flatten out a Sherman tank. These newer ones have way too much technology, and in a lot of the cases, you have a 4-cylinder engine with a supercharger and a turbocharger putting pressure into the engine. Combine that with the hybrid versions and you've got electrification. You've got way too much technology buried in there, and people are talking about braking issues, lane departure problems, pedestrian warning system issues, and a whole lot of electrical issues with the safety related equipment. And we also can't forget the TPM, the tire pressure monitor system, have been known to fail. They're not your typical garden variety sensors in there. It uses a combination of sensing diameter, pressure, and a whole lot, and it spits back and gives you a determination whether in fact you have a low tire pressure. But there's been way too much technology in a lot of these modern day Volvos, and I can't say that this is particularly reliable. I would give this a 2.5 out of 5 star. right over here, we have a Buick. Now, the Buick here is an Envision, as we see right there. It's not a particularly good looking vehicle. And quite frankly, it's all a matter of choice. With all this cheap Pep Boys looking plastic that you see right here, that's not a matter of reliability, but all this cheap chrome everywhere makes this vehicle feel very cheap. Granted, I mean, some of these Buick products do look kind of interesting. And this one here, you get this beautiful little chrome two-tone piece right here. That's kind of interesting. Interior is nicely finished as well. But remember, this is a GM product. And with that, you would expect some issues. And with a lot of these, people are saying there's throttle position issues or acceleration issues, hunting, surging, just in the accelerator. There's not a lot of concerns around the issues of transmissions per se, which a lot of GM products seem to have, or the engines themselves, but a lot of electrical issues and coolant leaks seem to be an issue where all of a sudden it's leaking, you get a check engine light, and lo and behold, there's a host of issues usually mounted behind that. With that said, this particular Buick isn't the worst one that they make, certainly by no means. And as far as a GM product goes, it's certainly, you could do much worse. I'll give this vehicle a 3 out of 5 star. Over here, we have a Nissan Murano. And many problems that a lot of Murano owners find is faulty door handles. For example, on the side here, they may work, they may not, they jam up, and particularly in the colder weather. The driver's seat, broken driver's seat, and actually retracting that, there's been cases where it hangs up on the rails and it's breaking there. Steering and broken seats in general. All kinds of problems with the brakes, and on the front end, the brakes not necessarily holding up very well. You get shuddering, you get vibration, and they just seem to be quite undersized for this style of vehicle. And most importantly, in later models like the 2015 Murano, you get transmission issues, which sadly, like many Nissan products, wind up getting. And again, with the right amount of maintenance and stay on top of the servicing and don't drive it hard, you can make that transmission last. It's a huge risk. Getting a CVT by Jatco and a lot of the Nissan products could instantly become a $4,000 or $5,000 repair if you have to replace one. Coolant leaks, oil leaks, all somewhat challenging and potential issues here. Some of the electrics have been problematic as well. But if you don't have one of the transmission issues, generally speaking, the reliability is moderate, fair to moderate. And I would give this vehicle a 3 out of 5 star for the Murano. Over here, we have a Lincoln MKX. This is basically a Ford product, and you would expect more problems. Surprisingly, there's less problems than you would expect. And naturally, sure, you've got a lot of nice details, electrics like this, all kinds of beautiful wheels on here, cycle around, beautiful LED taillights on this Lincoln right here, 2.7T all-wheel drive by the MKX. Surprisingly enough, not a ton of issues, and it actually, for a Ford product, it actually does fairly well. But those engines, again, there have been known issues with failures, there have been oil consumption issues, and certainly coolant water pumps an issue. But most importantly, this vehicle here, I would give this at a 3.5 out of 5 star. Here, the Acura RDX A-Spec here specifically, but any RDXs have proven to be quite reliable. Here's an older one, a 2015. You'll notice they have that big bar in the front. And here's a newer one, this is a 23. Quite a substantial change. I mean, just look. Here you have the basic looking bumper. Here you have this beautiful little vents. Look at the headlights, quite different. The new ones have that beautiful speckle right there. The old one's more of a projection. And they have that bar, as I say, the grills are quite substantially different. Now, they're both great vehicles, but they aren't without their fault. The big fault is the cost to buy into one of these, because this is almost their subcompact SUV. The other big factor is expensive servicing and maintenance costs. Being an Acura, it's upscale Honda. If you're used to buying Hondas, you think, okay, well, this will be easy to own. Not necessarily, because the maintenance and repair costs are quite high on these vehicles. Sadly, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Now, there haven't been a ton of problems. However, there have been some issues with fuel pumps potentially overheating because they don't have the energy to push enough fuel with a turbocharged engine. And as well, there's issues with navigation, some electrical problems, the odd coolant pump, and as well, the odd oil leak. Generally speaking, navigation and air conditioning have been a problem. Other than that, these have been very reliable, other than the elevated cost of servicing. And I would give this vehicle, the Acura RDX, a 4 out of 5 star. And the next one is this little Acura Integra, as we have buried here in this great little wrap. I love the looks of this thing, and actually, because it's a Honda product, it carries a lot of the same drivetrains. And the question is, how reliable is an Acura Integra? Of course, yeah, you get beautiful aftermarket wheels, and somebody's gone a lot of work to actually make this thing look interesting. It's a 23 Acura Elite. And as of this year, it carries a specific type of drivetrain, neither of which are particularly reliable. And for Honda, it's probably their worst case scenario. Beautiful Acura tail lights, which are consistent with the brand. naturally as you circle around. It's great looking hips on this vehicle, a beautiful barrage of technology. This one down there actually has a manual gearbox, which is actually what you want in this vehicle, because as standard, this comes with the 200 horsepower 1.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder engine under the hood. And we all know about the oil and fuel dilution issues that we talked about the CR-V and the Honda. That's the same engine, and you will probably have issues with that. You've got more maintenance, more frequent oil services to take care of, and if you abuse it, that engine will let you down. But the CVT, continuously variable transmission, is the other weak point in Honda. And when you equip these cars with the manual, which this one has, then you're good to go. But if you go with the CVT transmission, you blow a lot of your reliability out of the window. So generally, as a whole, with the manual gearbox and the 1.5, if you learn how to maintain this vehicle, I would say this vehicle here is a 3.5 out of 5 star for overall reliability. Here's another one on the lot that I just came across. Beautiful. We're looking at a 2009 Dodge Challenger. I gotta love this. This is the SRT8. Yes, you get a lot of the great details. SRT, look at the big badging on there. Big wheels, you get the Brembo red calipers on there. Yes, there's a lot of sort of so-called, you know, half quality parts, like the handles are kind of low quality. This looks sort of cheap, and of course they've gone and put some cheap wrap on there, but this is the SRT8, so what you're buying is the engine under the hood. You're not really looking for the quality, because the quality is going to let you down. Driving seats that aren't that supportive, they feel more like a Glad garbage bag, but the quality of the fit and finish is not this strong point. What is the strong point is that V8 that's under the hood, and that's what people buy these vehicles for. And they're wonderful. They look cool, they grab a lot of attention. So from a stylistic perspective, you really can't beat a Challenger driving down the road, especially with the V8 under the hood, packed right down under there. Now, the only issues that these saw typically that were out of the ordinary were some automatic transmission problems with some of these. In 2008, 2009, they were slightly problematic, causing some drivability issues. But get around that, the rest of the vehicle is actually quite reliable. Believe it or not, I'm rare to say this from a Jeep, Dodge, Ram, or Stellantis product. I give this vehicle a 3.5 out of 5 star. And here we have a couple more. Right here we have this great looking little Kia Stinger. As you'll notice, it has some great detail, and I've always loved these. The day these came out, I always fell in love with the looks of these Kia Stingers. You get big Brembo brakes on there, laser cut rims, you get all these vents and beautiful black chrome on there, as well as a big sunroof on top and a lot of great detail. You also get great performance from this vehicle, and it begs the wonder why you would not buy this. Sure, you get great looking taillights, you get, look, quad exhaust tips on there, which look wonderful, more detail there, beautiful lights, and everything just flows seamlessly along the body style and lines, right up to these big flaring nostrils at the front. And surprisingly enough, you know, with the reliability that what they are often is a little spotty with some of the Hyundais and Kia products, those that don't have catastrophic engine failures will go a long time. And actually, Kia Stinger is one of their more reliable vehicles. There's a very few number of issues that you can even talk about with these. Some of the issues, they say brake faults. Some of that could be just wear and tear, and your brakes are worn out. Of course, brake sensors, that is a common issue. Some people say a little bit of vibration and a little bit of rattly noise inside the cabin, and non-engine electrical systems. So in other words, things like lights, dashboard. Here you, of course, you have a heads-up display on there, and it could be more related to some basic general interior electrics or possibly even lighting. But for the most part, the engine, the gearbox, and most of the hardcore electrical components on these vehicles just seem to hold up very well. As a result, the Kia Stinger both looks great, goes great, and it's relatively reliable. I'm going to give this vehicle a 4 out of 5 star. And then we have over here a Nissan. This one here is big, bad, large, and in charge. I had a friend of mine actually had one of these a few years ago. This one's got the V8, so it's great for towing and hauling. But, you know, unfortunately, it isn't necessarily the most durable piece. Although I will say, because we're dealing with a V8, it's naturally aspirated, and it has a torque converter automatic transmission. For a Nissan product, these are some of the more reliable products. Of course, Nissan Armada, as we're seeing right there, this is a platinum, beautiful taillights. This thing is as big as a bus, semi-truck. It is large and in charge. You can literally set up a gymnasium in the back there, but it's large, and actually that engine hasn't been overly problematic. They're saying catalytic converters have been a little bit weak on some of these vehicles, and they are certainly thirsty to the point of needing drink upon drink upon drink. They're a thirsty vehicle, but overall, even though my buddy had an engine that failed on his, and it did, they had to get in and get a factory warranty replaced engine. That seems to be a lower number of problems with these vehicles. Generally speaking, the Nissan Armada gets a 3 out of 5 star for reliability. And right here we have another one, this beautiful old school Mercedes here, W212 generation, and it carries the W276 engine underneath, and it's one of their most reliable E-Class Mercedes-Benz. The new equipment can't hold a candle to some of these older generation Mercedes-Benz vehicles, and these are known to run 300,000 or 400,000 miles. Believe it or not, these will outlast many modern day luxury vehicles that you're getting from Mercedes, Acura, even possibly some from Lexus. These old school V6 engines are built for a lot of miles. The transmissions aren't particularly weak, and other than a few electrical issues, I've heard of a few motor mount problems. And you know, it's not a simple vehicle, so there can be modules and solenoids and a few failures here and there. These vehicles are built like a Sherman tank, and fortunately for Mercedes, this is what put them on the map. The E-Class is their sweet spot in the class lineup, and as a result, this generation is one of the best cars that Mercedes-Benz has ever produced. As a result, this vehicle gets, to me, a 3.5 out of 5 star. And with all of that said, I know you love that video. I hope it helped you a lot. And if you want to see more, another episode of this right there, I'll link that in for you. You want to check that out. A whole different barrage of vehicles and some of the ratings you can expect on those used cars. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.